players quit flying, and Blizzard's response is very honest. So we already talked about this, and I mentioned it, is that flying in the start of the expansion I felt like was completely pointless. I wanted to enjoy the leveling experience, enjoy the zones, take it all in, so I ground mounted. I didn't know this was a thing other people were doing. I thought I was the only one doing it on stream, but I guess a lot of people decided ground mounting was the way to start this expansion. Now, I did say, though, that I appreciated the option. Right, I like that Blizzard didn't lock everybody to the ground. If you want to fly around, go ahead and fly around, and if you want to ground mount, go do that. I think leaving it up to the players is the best way to do things here. It sounds like Bellular's hinting that maybe Blizzard's changing their mind here. Let's see what this video is all about from Bellular on why flying is going to change things here.
If you didn't click this particular headline, I don't blame you. I actually scrolled past it first time, but, well, we did click on it. And it looks like it's a simple change, that Blizzard have just unlocked steady flight all over the place. But buried inside this otherwise unsuspecting blue post, Blizzard actually did something a bit unusual, and it's kind of exciting. They responded to a player movement. If you're wondering which, it is this one. Basically, in this video, we covered the no flying movement that's appeared in Midnight. It's one where players are choosing to stay grounded, and they are basically loving it. It's not a small group of people either. There is clearly a real hunger for exploring the world slowly, drinking it all in, and perhaps having an experience that feels a bit closer to when you were exploring Azeroth for the first time.
Eversong Woods was beautiful. I loved riding around in this zone. It's just, it's so... I don't. They just did such a good job rebuilding it. They did, and I do feel like if you were flying around, you just miss all this shit. You're not gonna see these golden statues. You're not gonna see these penis-style pillars. You know, you're gonna miss out on all this shit. So I just think riding around on the ground, I wasn't in a rush. I had early access, just leveling up, having a good time, and I just felt like taking it all in from the ground was gonna be the most immersive way to play the game.
All those years ago. And it seems this has caught on so much that Blizzard have taken notice.
RP walking only, no mounts. Yeah, that's the real way to RP this game. That's right.
Here's what Blizzard said and why it matters. They say they've seen great discussion about how Midnight hits different from a ground mount, and they say they agree that it's fun to experience quests at a less frenetic pace and rewarding to engage with the world from the ground. Now, here's the big thing. Don't worry, they don't plan to restrict flight access. They confirm that.
Good.
But their wording actually matters because they said they don't plan to restrict it, quote, meaningfully in the future. Now, of course, with flight, cat is just out of the bag forever. But the word meaningfully is doing a lot of heavy lifting there. I mean, they're definitely thinking about it, especially...
well, are they just... Do they also just mean, though, that they're going to restrict the regular version of flight like they did this expansion? Just for a little bit? I think that's what they mean by that, meaningfully in the future. I can't imagine them restricting flight again. That was such a debacle. People hated that shit. Again, I did it on ground mount, and I enjoyed it, but I said this, I don't think people should be forced to do that. Just give people the choice. If they just want to fly around and be an elite Andy and, you know, parse out leveling and do it as fast as possible, then just let them do that. Maybe they don't enjoy leveling. Maybe they're dead inside. Maybe they're soulless. I have no idea. But just let people play the game the way they want to. That's the way I see it.
Because they then ask for more thoughts and ideas in the forum thread, and they make a big point of highlighting that people's feedback does actually change the future of the game. Now, I'm not going to say that it's a full-on hidden message just in there revealing their plans, but there are a lot of words that betray exactly what kind of thing they're open to in the future. Things like the rest of their damn post. You see, the full story here is that they were on autopilot whenever they set up Flight Midnight. They locked steady flight behind Pathfinder, as they usually do, but then they thought about it after lunch and realized it just didn't make any sense. Now, in response to that, they could have just flipped the switch on and posted about it in, what, a line or two? But instead, we got this entire big post instead that talks about a hell of a lot more than just steady flight. So with this, we finally get to see how Blizzard truly feels about flying. And they use a targeted kill quest as an example, where without flying, you've got to fight your way through the enemy stronghold, there are fixed guards to kill, there are roaming patrols to watch out for. And here's where Blizzard's description
It's a completely different experience. It really is a completely different experience when you take things in from the ground. There's even big moments where, like, you're running up to, like, Wind Runner Spire, right, for the first time. and you're going over the hill and you see the top of the spire as you're going up the hill, and then there's the big reveal coming out through the forest. There's Windrunner's Spire. Like, you miss all that shit. Or this moment here where, you know, you're charging down the hill and there's the Void Boys everywhere and you're fighting against them and you got all the Amani trolls around you and you're side by side. You miss out on all that shit. You do, and there's nothing Blizzard can do to change that. If flight's available and people want to just fly over it and drop down in the middle of the battle, that's just what they're going to do. To me, like I said before, though, while I do agree the best experiences had from the ground, no doubt, restricting people is not the way to go. So it sounds like from this that they're not going to restrict people, mostly. I'm still worried about that, maybe that little caveat there they put in there, but we'll see.
He takes a turn. You're, quote, generally being heroic, right?
Yeah.
That's what your character is doing when you're going to kill the bad guy in the bad guy's stronghold.
Right.
And this is the sort of thing the classic hardcore people have absolutely loved. They say that you test and use more of your skills, and the quest has a more satisfying build-up and conclusion, and it matches the player's status as a hero. Now, honestly, I think all that stuff is bang on true.
By the way, you also get to cap level at a more I don't know what to say, like a better timing. Like, if a lot of people were complaining that they finished the storyline quest and they were like the beginning of level 88 or something, and like they were like, oh, I got 2 levels and I finished the campaign. And if you guys remember with me, I hit cap level and I finished the entire campaign on the ground. And at the end, all I had to do was 2 delves, and I hit cap level. That was it. It took 2 delves beyond the campaign, and I was cap. And that was because when you're flying around, you're skipping a lot of mobs. You're skipping a lot of kills. Like I said, if you're in a battle, you got to chop through all these NPCs to get to the spot where you're supposed to get to. But if you just fly up and fly down, you've skipped now like 10 or 15 mobs. And now it stacks up if you're doing that all the way from the start of level 80 to level 90. You've skipped a ton of mobs by the end if you've been flying around that whole time. So you've missed out on a lot of XP. So complaining that the campaign doesn't take you to where it's supposed to, like it used to, I think does have to do a little bit with flying. You're just skipping a lot of XP by doing that shit.
I mean, as fun as knocking out all your world content in one fell swoop by just zipping around the place like you are some sort of jump jet fighter with VTOL that's crazy and powerful, it doesn't really feel like you're, say, a dude in a fantasy world with a sword running around on a horse, which for many people is the original fantasy of World of Warcraft. So I don't think what Blizzard put down there is just a description. I think it is a little bit propagandistic, in that it's focused on the experience and the fantasy far more than the actions you take. I mean, reading that, you may even remember playing Classic or TBC, walking around ruins, spinning your camera, looking out for patrols, pulling mobs about 50 yards back into safe areas, and just feeling pure relief on the ride back to town with a bunch of quests to hand in.
Yeah, it's the best.
Back then, your class's toolkit truly mattered. The level design mattered. The enemies mattered. You overcame the odds, and you felt like a hero.
Right.
And that makes the next bit all the more damning. Blizzard says in their post that with flight, you bypass all the risks. You just drop down on your target's head, you kill them without any repercussions, and you just fly away.
Right.
You basically drone strike them. It's way more.
It's essentially Lord of the Rings, right? You got the hobbits just jump on the back of the eagles, you land in Mordor, you drop the ring in there, Frodo's done, quest is over. That's basically what's going on here, right? You can have your 3-movie trilogy where you got to chop your way through the armies of Mordor, or you just hop on the back of your eagle, just throw the ring into the volcano, bam, movie's over. That's essentially what you're doing when you're just flying around for these opening quests.
Efficient, but in Blizzard's
no
words, quote, it reduces the challenge, removes elements of gameplay, and robs the player of much of the experience. I mean, you can almost taste the years of developer, maybe rage is too strong a word, but let's just use it. The developer rage packed into that sentence. Imagine spending years building levels with care and attention, only for many players to just ignore them completely because they're zooming over it. But again...
And the best part is, like, players that do this, they'll come back and they'll say, man, the leveling experience just isn't as fun as it was in Classic. You know, they'll never recreate what Classic was. And while I agree, like, Classic leveling is probably peak MMO leveling of all time. which is great. It is. But to bypass everything that was created, all the immersion and everything, and the stories and all that, and then complain that the leveling campaign isn't any good. Well, I mean, you didn't really play the leveling campaign. You flew around and turned in quests for 3 days. That's all you did. So I think if you really want to give the game a fair chance and you want to see the story and actually immerse yourself in the game the way Classic was, if you like the way Classic was, you definitely got to take it in from the ground.
Right. But again, this is a little bit of propaganda. It's not even remotely a fair comparison. It is basically just Blizzard putting into writing that flying has made questing specifically a worse experience. Though, of course, questing is not the only experience that some people go to World of Warcraft for. And that is where the future can get interesting.
What are they going to do?
So what are Blizzard going to do about all this? Why go to the bother of all those words if they're just going to do nothing? Well, at least immediately, they're going to do nothing. There will be nothing in Midnight or its patches. But The Last Titan is a bit of a different story. If Blizzard sticks to their 18-month schedule, The Last Titan will release around August 2027.
That's crazy, man. Damn, that would be fast. What the hell? We just started season 1 of Midnight, and we could have the Last Titan next year. Man,
Which really isn't that far
Pre-work.
away. Now that means Blizzard
Ridiculous.
are working on the early stages of that expansion right now. They are in production for those zones. They are building out that whole world.
That's
and
crazy.
that makes it the perfect time to start the flying conversation internally. I think clearly they want ideas. Now the obvious one is opt-in. Let people disable their own flight at the start of a campaign.
agree.
Maybe give them a title and a transmog if they finish it whilst grounded. But that doesn't solve the real problem. You see, Blizzard's post paints this picture of storming an enemy camp slowly, heroically, methodically.
Yeah.
But they very carefully ignore that actually doing that in the game looks like this, where you just run in and slaughter everything. You AoE all of it down in seconds. Even on a ground mount,
True.
that heroic gameplay doesn't really exist in WoW's world right now. People are just too strong for the world to be a threat. So, a cosmetic reward for staying grounded would be nice, but it does not bring back the experience Blizzard are
It's true.
romantic.
And if you made the world a threat, like honestly made it a threat, people would get pissed off. They'd run to the forums. They'd be like, "This damn quest is too hard. I can't fucking complete this shit. I can only pull one mob at a time. What the fuck is going on?" The days of BC, having to CC and sheep and do all this shit to get past mobs. I don't think the player base has the patience for that anymore. Even though sometimes they call for it. I just don't think people actually are interested in that. So yeah, we are powerful. I just can't imagine Blizzard actually making an intro quest line so difficult that if you pull 2 mobs at once, you're gonna die.
Emphasizing. If only they had an answer to both problems at the same time, and if only it was an answer they've literally already prototyped and we've actually played for months. Heroic World Tier version 2. Here's how Blizzard can solve all these problems with one system. In Legion Remix, they tested Heroic World Tier, and in Heroic World Tier, mobs in the open world were scaled up, XP and rewards were also boosted up to match that.
True.
Now, certain mobs had affixes that you had to play carefully around. Some were buffed until you would CC them, some would just summon in extra demons, and some would buff others, meaning it would be a challenge to do a big pull. Now, it wasn't perfect, but it was a fun experiment, and the result was basically proof that questing could still have teeth. Now, it was still a little bit busted, of course, because of flying. It would let you skip a lot of the combat of Heroic World Tier, which kinda took some of its teeth away. So here's an obvious solution. In The Last Titan, add Heroic World Tier from the very start. Disable flying while it's active, and bump all the rewards up. If you want an efficient speed leveling experience, just go play whatever way that you want, which could be the way you play the game right now. If you want a relaxing time, maybe play the game grounded on normal.
Yeah, if they gave Heroic World Tier and they bumped the item level up of everything you got, maybe they could actually give you technically what you would get if you did that, that grind, the preseason grind where you got up to that certain item level, whatever it was before the season went live. They could give you that through questing, which would mean if you decided to do Heroic World Tier, open, campaign questing, and it would take you longer, but then technically you wouldn't need the preseason window because by the time you finish it, you would be geared enough to jump straight into the season when it opens. So that gives players the options then. You could just burn through the freaking quest, do it regular, and then play preseason shit where you're just grinding out dungeons over and over. Or you could do heroic style where you take your time through the quests. It's going to take longer, but you're going to get better gear, which means you're not going to need the preseason window. That could be the way they do it. Actually sounds like a good idea.
But if you want that full questing experience, where it's challenging, where the design, the layout of the World of Warcraft actually matters, then pick Heroic World Tier. And combining these even saves Heroic World Tier itself.
And you can give an XP bonus, kind of like with War Mode on, where by the time you finish the campaign, you should be cap level.
That's because the added time and challenge of staying grounded means they don't have to worry about outliers, like, as an example, objective-only quests that flying trivializes. Because if you could just turn on Heroic World Tier, but then fly straight to single mini-boss kill quests and knock out the whole map in no time, well, it wouldn't really be Heroic World Tier anymore. And Blizzard wouldn't even need to scale it that high either. That's because staying grounded adds natural challenge that is more interesting than just giant numbers and crazy affixes. And if you think about it, this combo could actually revive the experience that Blizzard's post just described. Patrols you need to avoid or CC instead of just fly past or AoE down. Caves and ruins that actually feel like they are spooky. Remember that from back in the day when you were new, when you were stupid, when you didn't have a metagame-pilled brain, and going into a cave in WoW actually felt like a bit of an adventure? A time when you were one body pull away from squeaky bum time. And the thing is, ground mount players have already reported that a lot of that old questing DNA still exists in WoW when you're not flying. The zones already support it. Plus, this limit would mean you couldn't cheese it by just having someone in the party flying around to do the objectives.
Interesting. Yeah, you could give a title for it as well. Yeah, that's a good idea. You could have a title for it. So, an achievement tied to completing the intro quest line in heroic mode. Yeah, surely. I would say, like, the patient would be a good one. But that title already exists in the game, but imagine, you got the patient because you patiently actually quested through the game.
Though you might actually want to party up for the particularly hard quests, which may make WoW feel a bit more like an MMO. And then, if you're in World PvP, well, then you just have a whole phase of people who can't just fly to safety. You see, World PvP was basically killed by the Burning Crusade and flying. Just about everyone who played the game back then knows this simple fact, and we've never really got past it since. And Blizzard can make this worth it.
That's true. I mean, the last time I remember World PvP being super relevant was pre-flight BC. What I mean by pre-flight is like everyone was grinding out gold to get that shit, and I remember, and I tell you guys this story all the time, Isle of Quel'Danas, grinding out gold, doing dailies to get my flying mount, and that fucking island was just PvP central. People just, Horde and Alliance just fighting the entire time, back and forth, killing each other, ganking each other, camping each other, while we're trying to complete these world quests that I played on a PvP server at the time. So there was no opt-out back then. You were in a zone where PvP could happen, PvP was going to happen. And then flight took off, and then, you could just kind of fly away. Now, people used flight to gank all the time, but I wouldn't consider that World PvP. I am interested to see what they do with Wintergrasp. Since we're going back to Northrend, the Last Titan, are we going to get Wintergrasp back? Man, I love that place. We'll see.
After a while. Flying makes things super efficient, so it could be the natural thing to do, but reward scaling in a harder phase could tip that balance back. Enough bonus XP that the campaign takes you, perhaps, all the way to max level instead of just hitting the level gates, as many people have. Maybe a unique recolor of the leveling gear, and perhaps even side quests and world quests could give you veteran crests at max level, or maybe even champion crests if the world...
Make heroic world tier questing so rewarding that there is no reason to finish it early, to grind it out before the season starts. That's basically what you'd have to do.
Here was hard enough at endgame. It's never going to be as intense as hardcore, but it could scratch some of that itch. And with Blizzard's buffet philosophy, it slots into it just being another way to play.
Yeah, make you play like Sam, exactly.
People. You could ignore it if you'd rather fly, or if you liked old school WoW, you could live in that. And I see countless players talking about how leveling just doesn't make any sense anymore, how leveling just feels like a chore, how WoW is just completely endgame pilled right now. The likes of this could be a solution to that problem. Honestly, I'm not sure if Blizzard will go whole hog for this. It's true, a lot of ground mount enjoyers are there for the relaxing experience. A hard mode might not be right for them. But here's the thing that matters. Blizzard didn't write a patch note. They wrote some propaganda. Carefully worded, emotionally loaded propaganda for a version of WoW that has not existed in years. You don't write a blue post like that unless you're at least thinking about acting in some of these ideas. So whatever the Last Titan does with flying, the blue post tells you at least where the developers' hearts are.
Right.
And after years of watching players skip over a meticulously crafted world, you can't blame them for wanting that world back. But there's one more thing Midnight proves, and it's that when WoW takes an expansion back to the older world, back to the zones and the lore that just feels core Warcraft, going back to Warcraft 3, going back to vanilla, going back to the Burning Crusade, and not just some random island that's been pulled out of a hat, well, maybe that's part of why people are actually caring about the world again. Maybe it's part of why people want to have that grounded experience.
I did want to see Eversong Woods again in the new form. I did want to see all the Amani Troll lands in their new form. That's true. Like, part of the reason why I was very much enticed to Groundmount is because I have memories of these zones. And those memories were on the ground. And I wanted to see it all again from that same vantage point.
So whatever the Last Titan does with flying, it will do that in goddamn Northrend, a place that people love. And that blue post tells you where the developers' hearts are. After years of watching players skip their world, you can't blame them for wanting it back. And if you're the sort who wants more world content, I've got good news for you. Patch 12.05 has a lot of it, and you can find out all about it in this video next.
Yeah, and if you remember when we went to Northrend last time, I mean, I'm pretty sure you couldn't unlock cold weather flying right away. Maybe it was just a gold restriction, but I remember not getting cold weather flying for quite a while. I don't remember if they capped it at the end, where you had to be cap level to get it, but it was a thing. So I mean, early on in the Burning Crusade, or in Wrath of the Lich King, we were not flying around. I remember going into Howling Fjord and all that shit on the ground mount, and people didn't bitch about it back then either. People were like, yeah, they were fine with it. Taking it all in from the ground was a normal thing. Had to be level 77. There you go, no way. So yeah, it was 77, which made sense because some of the later zones in Wrath of the Lich King, you did have to fly around. Those Titan facilities and shit, flying made sense for those zones. So all that, I think, was well done on Blizzard's part. We'll see what they do with restricting flying and everything going forward. I don't think they should restrict it, but that heroic tier mode did sound pretty cool, actually. Nice video from Bellular.